Hello and welcome to another Beer Clipper video. This video is me entering another challenge. Finally, I'm a month late. I should have started this probably at the beginning of the year when it was announced, but I haven't had time. I've been really busy, as you will have noticed on the channel. This is for the Tabletop Crafters United Discord. And the challenge is an interesting one, and I have been gathering together materials, which you will see very shortly when I point the camera down. But basically the idea is to take a Disney IP, a Disney product, and combine it with another genre or theme to make something interesting. And so I have chosen Herbie, the beetle. I love that film. Well, I haven't watched it for years. I probably think it's rubbish now, but I certainly used to love it. And it is a Disney IP. I didn't realise until I was researching to do this challenge. So I've gone for that. And I'm going to combine it with not one, because you know me, I don't do things by halves, but two different things. So the first thing I'm going to combine it with is Flinstones, and the second thing I'm going to combine it with is Gaslands. So we're going to have Herbie as a Gaslands car, and we're going to be racing on a prehistoric themed racetrack. So I'm going to do a bunch of scatter terrain, which is going to be able to be put down on a table, and maybe eventually, whenever I get to play a game, we can play a game of Gaslands using this material, this terrain that I'm going to make. So let's get looking at the table. I'll show you what I've gathered together. There's some interesting stuff. There's some things that have been inspired by other people, and then let's start to plan out what we're going to do and get this build on the road, because I've only got 28 days until it needs to be done, and there's a whole load of other things that I need to do this month as well. So let's get going. So here we are, an eclectic mix of items. First of all, what we've got here is some bones. Now these are chicken bones, which I've watched Benji's hobbies, and he did fantastic stuff with some chicken bones that he took off of a roast chicken. I would attempt to remember to put a link up here if you want to go and watch it. It's really, really worth watching that video, really clever. And it inspired me to give it a go myself. Now I overcooked mine. We put them in our wood burner, in our Petchka oven, and it got too hot for too long and they are singed. However, that does mean that they're definitely not going to have any creepy crawlies, but they are a little bit crumbly. So I will need to be a little bit careful when I'm working with those. Over here I have some more bones, also chicken bones, just from chicken legs, which I dried slightly more carefully, and this is an old bone from our land. We live in southern Bulgaria, and it has been there's bones all over it, basically just from dead cattle that have died. I have some plastic toy dinosaurs, which I'm going to convert. Here, I bought these ages ago and never used them, and now I'm finally going to have a chance to. These are basically bones of different animals, and so I'm going to be able to use those to do something pretty cool, I think. So I've got a Smilodon and a Triceratops, and here I have some eggshells. Just chicken eggshells that I have dried. I've baked them, and they are going to be used to do some scatter terrain. And finally, I don't yet have Herbie. He's on a truck. He is on his way. But here is the Flintstones vehicle, which I managed to pick up, thinking, I want that. I don't know why. And that was weeks ago, before this challenge ever came into my mind. And this is also going to be converted up to be a Gaslands car. So we have a lot of material, as you can see. My thinking is that I'm going to use two of these bones and maybe two more across the top to do a starting gate or something like that, or a bridge. So I'll probably have that kind of an idea. So something long and thin with these kind of like bound together with leather straps or what have you. The other thing that inspired me, potentially I might do for the starting gate, is something similar, just with the two uprights and with string across, and model it on the scene in Herbie where he shoots off underneath the banner that goes across the road. So I might do that. Scatter terrain wise, I'm going to be doing things like eggshells that are broken open like this, so it looks like it's where a dinosaur may have hatched from. So that's one thing I'm going to do with those. I'll be using these to also make up some other scatter terrain, so things that you can use to guide the cars around. And I will also be maybe cutting these up, or maybe just painting them and having them as kind of like static displays around, put them on bases and make them look a bit better and a little bit less plastic. So there's a lot to do. The bones will also be the same sort of thing. I think the main thrust of this is going to be lots of bones and lots of dinosaur-y type things, and hopefully it will look really good. So I'm going to get a sketch pad, I'm going to start drawing some stuff, and then when I get to start making, I'll bring you along and show you what it looks like. So yeah, let's get this build on. So let's get started. What you'll notice is I've got a plank of wood and I've got a bit of cardboard which is currently clamped down to it. And that is how I'm going to be doing my terrain. What I've found is if you clamp down your terrain, it doesn't warp, which is very good. Now, I might need to come along and put a longer clamp here and here, but that's fine, or I could even just pin through it, which is what I might end up doing, because what I'm going to be doing is creating lots of different bits of terrain out of this one sheet of cardboard, and then when it's all done and all dry, I can cut it out and use it. So that's the idea. So for my starting gate, and I've just been reading the rules, I have the rules. I bought them a little while ago because I really want to get into this. It says that gates need to be the same width as a long straight. And a long straight is 18 centimetres, 118 millimetre wide. So you can see here, race gates, width of a long. And it says that you need to have a starting line, gate 1, gate 2 and a finishing line. That's in one of their examples. So you need at least 2 or 3 gates. So I'm going to start work on 2 gates initially. I'm going to work on the one which will be made up of 4. Let me just pull them over. If you see, that is about 18 millimeters, 180 millimeters, exactly correct. So I'm going to do the one which is going to be made up of the combined bones, and I'll also do the starting one which will be 2 bones upright with a string between them. So let's get stuck into that first of all. We'll grab a pencil and we'll work out roughly some dimensions. Grab a pencil, he says. 1 second. I'm back. I have a pencil. And we can see that 180 millimeters, 180 millimeters is from there to there. So that's actually the width. So this piece of cardboard may actually end up being too narrow for me to do it long width-wise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along instead. That'll make it a bit easier for me to make sure that I have space to cut. So that's our 180. And I will now just kind of like roughly build out from that. Doesn't have to be straight. I'll be coming along on this with some modelling compound anyway soon, which will bleed over and what have you, but that's at least the minimum width, and we'll do another one roughly the same width as well. So there we are. Cool. So those are 2 bases that can be used as gates. Gates don't have to have a full up and over. It can just be 2 pieces of terrain, which is pretty cool, because what I've got is I've got a triceratops skull. I love they're probably my favourite my favourite dinosaur, the triceratops. So I'm going to basically draw around that, and I will embed that in some modelling compound, and that will be a nice, really easy bit of scatter terrain. So the other thing we've got is we've got some of these eggshells, and if we look, so what I might do is actually have it so that it's stood upright like that. So again, I will draw around that, and that can be quite a nice little bit of scatter terrain as well. And I might do 2 eggshells. I might do another smaller one here and have that one like up a bit. We'll see how it goes. So I'll do another one here. Now I reckon I am going to need to have more than 1 sheet of cardboard. I'm going to need to have more than 1 board going at once, which is fine, it doesn't matter, it's absolutely cool. So yes, I will obviously make that up, and I'll bring you along when I do that. So the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a long thin one for this bit of bone. And there we are. Right, so the thing to do now is I'm going to get and mix some modelling compound, and I'm going to do these 3 first, I think. So embedding the triceratops skull and the 2 eggshells, because they're going to be the easiest to do, and the upright, I might do the first upright, which won't have the bridge across the top, I think that will be quite an easy one for me to do as well, just to embed into some modelling compound. So I will do that and I'll bring you along, and then while that's curing for these first few, I will think about how I'm going to join together the bones for going across the top like so, which I'll do on this one. So let me get some modelling compound and I'll bring you along and show you how I do that. Right, and so I've mixed up some modelling compound, so let's get started. I've also stuck some pins in just to keep that a little bit of rise that was happening over the length of this down. Normally I would fill the whole board and be able to clamp along the edges, but that's not how I've done it. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, we're going to start with this. So we're just going to come with some modelling compound. We're going to press it down onto the template that I've made, and then push the bone into it. It really is as simple as that. And what I may end up doing is making a impression of the bone in the modelling compound and then removing it, so that I can then paint most and terrain and scenic most of the base without having to mask the bone, because I want the bone to look how it does, and then come back and put the bone in afterwards. So we'll make ourselves a bit of a kind of mound like this, smooth it out, and I won't film every single, let me move the camera slightly, I won't film every application, I'll just show you how I'm doing this one, and then the rest I'll do off camera. So once we're happy with how that looks, I'm going to come along, I'm going to press it in like so, leave it there for a little bit, and then I'll pull it out again before it dries, and then what we'll have is a space where the bone will sit, and I'll be able to glue that in nicely. But I can now do all the scenicing around it without having to worry about getting paint on it. So there we are, that's that. So I'm going to do the rest. I'll do the same thing for these. I'm not going to bother, I'm going to leave these in. So I will actually put the modelling compound on, glue them in place and leave them. But this one I might just do the impression as well, but we shall see. So I'm going to turn the camera off now, get this done, and I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it. So there we are. That's done, and I'll let that go off. As I've said, I was going to do the big bone and the Triceratops skull. Both are just sat in, and I'll be able to add them in when I'm ready. This, I ended up having to use hot glue to glue down these, but I was in such a rush I couldn't get the camera out. But I'll show the full technique when I come to do the final gate here on this sheet. And then I had a little bit of the modelling compound left over, so I grabbed a tail to stick out of the ground. Just, I don't know, doesn't look very realistic, but whatever. I'll probably get myself another board and another sheet of cardboard and do another couple of different options, which you'll start to see as I'm working through this project. But I'm not going to repeat myself. It'll be basically the same technique with using modelling compound, clamping them down to a board, and then anything that I don't want to have paint on, I will just put an impression in, and anything else I will actually stick in probably with hot glue. These shells are very, very delicate. Funny that, isn't it, eggshells being delicate? What I'm going to need to do is actually paint them with PVA, probably several coats of PVA just to toughen them up a bit, and I'll do that as well. I'll bring you along for that. But the next thing to do is to do another board, like I say, let it all to go off, and then we'll come back and we'll start to apply our texturing to the base. This is hopefully going to be a quick build, and I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do with my dinosaurs, my toy dinosaurs. I didn't even realise they've got like noises, I think, I'm not sure. I think maybe you can put a battery in it, and it's got some sort of button on the bottom you can press. So I don't know how useful they are going to be in the end after all. But the main thrust of this build will end up being actually the cars, and I will obviously do those on camera as well. That's going to be fun. So I'll let this go off and I'll bring you along for the next step when I get to it. So I'm just working on the next board, as you can see, of scatter terrain, and thought I'd bring you along for this one because I'm going to be making the Flinstones house. I've got a picture which I will flash on screen now if I remember, which I probably will remember, of a classic from the cartoon series. There's a lot of stuff on Google if you search for this of a real house that supposedly looks like the Flintstones house, but it doesn't actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of this polyfiller, this empty polyfiller box, I'm just going to hot glue it down to a base. I might do it there actually, and then what will happen is we'll have quite a large base for this one with some with the rocky path and the little kind of like stone table. So first of all, we're going to hot glue it down. So let's get a load of hot glue on that. I seem to be using more and more hot glue all the time, even though I'm not a big fan of it. I find it very stringy and annoying, and it yeah, it does annoy me. So once this is hot glued down, what I'll be doing is I'll be using the terrain stuff, Luke's APS's modelling compound, to do the shape. So there we are. It's a bit close to the edge actually, so let's move it a bit to there, and that'll be fine. So that's glued down, and then we'll just hot glue the top on as well, and that will mean that I can do like the stone kind of like shape coming here. Just slap some hot glue on and done. Okay, there we are. So I'll probably bring you along for this build. It's going to be an interesting one, but I'm going to continue doing a few more other bits and pieces of scatter terrain. You can see I've got skeletons, I've got the real chicken bones here as well. So yeah, I'm going to I'll carry on. I'll probably going to be able to get one more or two more little bits of scatter terrain over at this end, and then I will start mixing up the compound, and like I say, I'll start filming again when I get to this bit. So we're going to come to doing the Flintstones house now. So I'm just going to pop some music on, speed this up a little bit, and get this sculpted. I'm using, as I said, the Luke's APS modelling compound to do this. Hopefully it'll work well. If it doesn't work, then I will try a different method, maybe with air dry clay. But this is going to be my first attempt. So yes, I'll pop some music on, and you can see how well this goes. Back to this, and a little bit of a spoiler, that house that I was going to make just did not work. It was absolutely rubbish, so I'm going to throw it away. We'll just nap it off, and I'll probably leave the footage in super speeded up so you can see what I'm talking about, but yeah, absolute terrible. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come along and do a couple of things on these. I'm going to be painting the base colour down onto the soil, and I'm also going to be sticking the starting gate together, and I've had some really cool ideas of how I'm going to do that. So I think my hot glue gun has heated up. I planned ahead. It has, look at that. So the first thing we're going to do is hot glue these two sections together. So let's just chunk a load of hot glue on there. Like I say, I'm using hot glue more and more and more all the time. And sorry for the throatiness and the sniffs. I have a stinking cold, which is really, really bothering me. Not nice. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to get two more legs, which I have on the tray just behind the camera. I wasn't that prepared. And these are going to be hot glued in place on the board, so that they will actually join up. My hands are in the wrong place. Let me just reorganise that. So they will join up like so. So that end will mesh into that little corner. So to do that, I'm going to lay it down and offer it up, and then I'll know where to put my little hot glue blobs, and I will hot glue these down. So you can see it's quite wide to do that. So what we'll do now is we'll put a hot glue blob down here,
I'll make it quite big so I can move it if I need to. Make sure that I get the bone in the correct orientation. And then let's do the other one. And what I'll have to do is come back and do this with the modelling compound as well. So I'm going to be slightly behind on this section, but I should be able to catch up quite easily. And now this should sit across the top. It does. Right, I'm going to let that go off, not going to put that across yet, and then I will hot glue it in place, and then I will come to the next step of that, turn the hot glue gun off, which will be, well, I'll show you when I come to it, how I'm going to make it look like it is strapped. Next thing is to do apply some paints to these. So I have my Africa paint, which I really like. It's a really nice kind of like purpley grey. It's a very cool colour. So I'm going to paint that over all of these bases. So I will pop some music on and I will get that done. And then I'll be back for the final step of this particular building time, which is going to be putting a lot of PVA all over those very delicate shells. But I want to do that after I've painted the base on. I'm umming and ahhing at the moment about whether I'm going to put sand down. For the time being, I'm just going to do a base coat. I can always come back and add sand with PVA if I want to. So that's why I don't have my sand out. So I'll get that done and I'll put some music on. I need to push on with this project. I've kind of let it slide a bit. I am waiting for a delivery. That cursed activity that just always takes ages to get to me. But hey, I'm going to carry on anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over all of these with PVA over the eggshells. Now I might end up painting the eggshells as well because they are so obviously chicken eggshells at the moment, and I might paint them green or whatever. But for now I'm just going to, well, you're going to watch. I'm going to be able to hopefully secure them, make them a little tougher. It might take a couple of coats and I'll be very carefully checking. But if I just flood these with PVA, then they'll become very much hardier. So with that done, let me move the camera and we'll do the next thing, and then and then I'll be starting to think about actually applying flock and get these finished, because yeah, they're not far off actually, to be honest. The eggshells are going to take the longest. I should be able to get the rest of it done quite quickly. So let's move the camera and I'll show you how I'm going to do the gate. So big lumps of hot glue isn't really what look I want for this. So what I've thought about doing, and I don't know if this is going to work, I hope it will, it should do. What I've thought about doing is I have some very fine and very expensive masking tape. This is crazily, stupidly expensive, and really I shouldn't be using it for this kind of a build, but whatever. You can't take money with you, can you? And so my idea was to try to use it to make it look like the binding around this joint, and it will actually also add a little bit of strength and support. So to make it look like it's been strapped together. This is special Tamiya masking tape for making model kits, and as I say, it is exorbitantly expensive, and this is a really stupid waste of resources, but hey. So there we are. That was my idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do this on each of the corners, and then probably what I'll do is I'll come along and I'll paint it to look a bit more like leather, though the yellow is quite nice as it happens, so I might leave it like that. So there we are, that's how I'm going to bind those together. So as you can see, the two gates are up. This gate here is ready, but I haven't yet done the base, which I'll do off camera, because all that's going to be is more modelling compound and then painting it. And what I'm going to come to now, I'm going to do the next couple of steps on these. First of all, I'm going to glue down the elements here. So we've got the bone here, we've got the skull there. Just going to use PVA. So I'm going to put a blob of PVA in the hole where the skull will sit, and that should hold it nicely. And then I will use PVA as well to press to hold down the other bone as well. There we are. That looks great. So we'll just run a blob of PVA along. There we are. So the next thing to do is going to be some static grass work. And I'm going to use, if I reach up here, I love how everything is within reach, even when I'm not prepared. I'm going to use the dead stat grass, 2mm dead grass from Geek Gaming, from Luke. And I'm just going to basically cover the entire model. I have just realised there was one other thing to stick in. This is not a tentacle. People that saw pictures of this on the Tabletop Crafters United Discord thought it was a tentacle. It is not, it is a tail. It may be a little bit odd that I decided to have it sticking up like that, but hey, it's my model, I can do what I want. It's my party, I can cry if I want to. So we'll just stick that in as well. So what I'm going to do, if that will work, might, there we are, hopefully that'll hold it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself my static grass applicator, I'm going to get myself my fast tack glue from Warworld Scenics, which is what I like to use. I do have another, yes I do, another one up there in my backup, so if that runs out I do have a replacement. And then I'll bring you along, and what we'll do is we'll put some static grass on these bases. I have the other board as well, obviously with the failed house in the middle. I'll do all those together, and then when I next mix up some modelling compound, which will be very soon for the model railway, funnily enough, I will also mix enough and finish off this area here. I'm really enjoying this, not far off completed now on these terrain pieces, and then I can get started converting up this. And also, so I believe you have 2 cars per team, and so I have a Barbie truck. So it's going to be the Flintstones with Barbie versus Herbie plus another. I may try and find a police car, I'm not sure. But anyway, I will bring you back in a second when I've got my static grass all ready and we're about to start applying it. As you can see, I've put some paper down. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to work on this one now while you're watching, and I'll do the rest off camera because it's basically sort of repetitive steps. So the way that I work it is I will put some glue down. I don't actually know if this works. It might have sealed up the end. Yeah. Let me just clean out the end and I'll be back in a second. I literally didn't take very long, just got a spike and stuck it through. So yeah, so I really like using the Warworld Scenics glue. It's quite runny. It's runnier and easier to work with than the fast dry basing glue from Luke's APS. Though I do think he does have a product like this, but I have not tried it because I've got so much of the Warworld Scenics ones. But anyway, so you just put that on where you want it, and I want quite a good covering over here. I'm going to have a little bit more of a sparse covering over where the cars will be going, but on the banks and around the base of this I want to have quite a lot. So we put that down where we want it. And then grab a brush and spread it out a bit more if you wish. I will do that because I don't want it to be quite, I want it to be quite a smooth application, not too lumpy. You can see it is nice and runny, which is a good thing because it means it gets into all the crooks and nooks and crannies. So yeah, so we'll get this applied. And then when it's been applied, you come along with the static grass applicator, and again I have a Warworld Scenics Pro, which I bought one of their very first they ever sold, though they have upgraded it for me since because it stopped working. And you use the wire to create a kind of signal path or current path. So what I've done is I have a pin which I have always in the little kind of like clampy thing, which you can see there. I don't know if that's come out. So I have a pin which makes it a little bit easier for me to hold this in place. So you come along, you complete the circuit, and then magic happens. And this is why you have your paper down, because it is almost impossible to do this tidily. Now the issue I've got at the moment is I cannot get the magnetic thing very close to the base of the upright, which is going to cause me a little bit of a problem in that it won't stand up there because it's not close enough to its magnet. So this is actually not going to potentially look very good apart from in the middle, but There are other tips and tricks you can do, and I'll show you what I do to save that when I get to it. So there we are, lots and lots of static grass going down, and where you can get close, it's helping it to stand up. There we are. So what I'll do is I'll let that to dry, and then when it's done I will shake it off and gather it back up and reuse it. And I will also come along, I'll show you, you get a little bit of a pin and you can stand up your static grass. So I'll bring you along for that step when I get to it. Really not sure how well that's showing up, but from my perspective and when I'm looking at this, it's got a big sheen to it. It's very glistening, probably from the glue. I think the glue is quite a shiny glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along with some dust and just dust over the top just to deaden that down. So I have some of Luke's gaming matte scenic sealant. Now the problem I have with this is that the actual squirty thing broke, so I use a dropper now to drop this onto what I'm doing. There's such a huge sheen on this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this over, just over the whole of it, and then come along with some dust and drop the dust on as well. That's running off the edge, which is not what I wanted. It's very, very watery, this. Very watery indeed. So yeah, so I'm just going to drop that on, get it where I want it to be, and then I have my backyard dirt and I'm going to sieve it over. So I actually have a sieve and I'm actually just going to drop it through the sieve, which is going to help it spread a bit better hopefully, and that will deaden down that shine and also just add a little more texture to this piece. And I think then, with that done, that's probably going to be the last thing that I'll do on this, and then I'll be moving on to the cars. So I can get this done on all of the pieces, on all the separate sections, and then it'll be time to cut them out, which I'll bring you along for to show what it looks like. But this is going to work really well, I think. Just putting a little bit of dirt over the top, and then put in the scenic. I think maybe put the scenic glue on after I've put the dirt on, and that might work a bit better. So yes, anyway, I'll get that done. This will deaden down that shine, and I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it. There we are, that separated out pretty nicely, apart from this one which popped off the base. But that's okay, I can probably glue that down to something else and save that quite easily. So what I'm going to do now, I won't do this on camera because it's going to be a little bit fiddly, but what I'll do now is I will come along and trim all of these down. So come with the knife very, very close and just do lots of little cuts. And this may take some time, but I think it's going to be worth it, and with that this will be done. So this is to make sure that I don't pop these off the cardboard. They do seem to be wanting to pop off the cardboard, which I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting the modelling compound to stick a bit better, but yeah, I'll get that done, and then when I'm finished I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like. I want to give a shout out to Sean Conley, who is the guy that made me actually finally pull this hair lacquer ultra power out of where I had it. I bought it ages ago, never used it, thought it was a silly idea, but I watched one of his videos recently and he used it to hold down some loose flock, and so I've tested it on this and it works very, very well. The dirt that I put on wasn't holding down very well at all, and it was all falling off and it was annoying me, and I came along with this and it stuck. So I'm now going to go and do all the rest of the pieces, but I did just want to say thanks, Sean, really appreciate that. That's going to help me out a lot. So now we come to the next stage of this build, which is the one that I'm actually the most nervous of, because making terrain, yep, I can do that, and I'm happy with the terrain I've come up with for this. But what I now need to do is to take my cars and actually make some Gaslands cars, which is going to be a first for me. I've never done anything like this before. It goes against my natural inclination as well, because normally I like to keep things nice, and taking these beautiful cars, particularly this Herbie, and trashing it kind of hurts. It's not really my not really my style. But anyway, that's what this is, and that's what this game is. So I'm going to crack on with it and get the joy I can out of it. So the reason why I'm late starting this is I've spent quite a lot of time, and I have just spent some time thinking about which sponsors I want to do and I want to use for these cars. So you can see here I've got the rule book, and I've just been digging through, and I think I've finally decided what to do. So over here we have the Barbie Hot Wheels, and we have the Flintstones car, and I'm going to do those two in the slime sponsor. Now this gives us some spiked fist. This is the main reason I've picked it, so that means I can go with an idea that I'd already had, making use of these leftover parts from the skeleton that I used and that I've kind of built into the terrain, and I can have like a ram type thing with fists on the side of the of this vehicle here from the Flintstones, and I can obviously muck around with Barbie and make Barbie quite badass. For the second team, and this is Herbie's team, I'm actually going to go for Highway Patrol, which I think is going to be quite good. I went to the weekend and managed to find a police car, that can pair with Herbie. I have just questioned myself a few times on this, but I think I am going to stick with Highway Patrol. That gives us quite a bit of speed, and I will be able to like put guns and what have you on that. Now, talking about guns and what have you, I went out, I ordered this machine gun set, which is in 135 scale, and I'm going to make use of that to convert up certainly the Highway Patrol cars, whereas the Barbie and the Hot Wheels is going to be much more kind of like Barbie Hot Wheels, sorry, and for slime is going to be much more kind of like using stuff that I've got lying around, so barbecue skewers and what have you to do spikes. So that's my plan. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take these apart, going to have a look at them. I have seen that these are not screw bottom ones. They are they have rivets holding them together, so I've seen a lot of people take these apart, screw around with the interiors because they can use screws here. For some reason, I'm not sure, but these Hot Wheels do not have a screw on the bottom. They all have a rivet, which is going to make it harder to do a lot of converting, but I'm not going to do a huge amount of converting because it's my first time. So I'm going to have a look at these, take them out of the wrapping, and I'll bring you along and show you all of the conversions I do. And yeah, hopefully this is going to be fun, and I'm not going to feel too sad, particularly wrecking the poor Flintstones vehicle, which does need a little bit of filling actually, funny enough, so I'll do that as well. I probably will end up repainting, certainly the Flintstones one as well. So anyway, I'll bring you along for that when I get to it, so let's get stuck in. Right then, let's get gluing. So what you can see here is I've started first of all on the Flintstones car because that's one I had the ideas for. So I've got these hands, these claws that are from that kit that I converted, that I've made use of for the actual terrain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick these on the side, as you can see. And this here is actually a chicken bone, and I'm going to glue that to the top. Now I think this particular vehicle I am going to completely repaint. It needs filling and what have you. It's not the best quality, but it is cool. So I will be painting this entirely and repainting all of the bones and what have you. And I'm going to do something which I don't do very often. I'm going to use hot glue. I'm using it more and more actually as it happens. So just a lump of hot glue on there, and then let's get that stuck in nicely there. There we are. Now the idea is that these could be either grabber hands or a ram or something like that. So they can, in game terms, in game mechanics, they could be multiple different types of weapon, but they also look pretty cool, I think. So glue that in there. There we are. And last but not least, a load of hot glue down the middle of the chicken bone and slap that on top. And there we are. I have started my first Gaslands car. That looks good. Okay, so I'll let that dry, let that go off, and then I'll think about what else I might add to this. But that's already looking pretty awesome. I'm really happy with that. Right, I'm gonna crack on with the rest of it. Right, so the Barbie car. this is going to be a ice cream van with an annoying jingle playing "I'm a Barbie girl." That's the idea. And what I've got here is some prongs from a broken plug, which I saved with the idea of using them on another build, and I never used them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hot glue these to the front of this, and I'll probably end up using some sculpting stuff to kind of like make them a little bit more secure. I might join them together. I've just been playing around a little bit with a bradawl trying to make a hole, but I'd probably need to drill, and I don't actually think that it would work very well. If we have a look at just how large that is, I think that it will probably not work very well anyway with the drilling a hole and trying to insert it. So what I'm going to do is glue it there, and then I'll probably brace it or something like that. So I'll put some braces across or whatever. So the hot glue gun is heating up. So when that's hot, I'll get that stuck on. The other thing I've been working on is the police car. So the police car is going to have machine guns. Twin machine guns is how I'm going to do it. And these come from that mini art kit. So I have 2 machine guns that I have put together here. And these will be mounted, side mounted to the side of the car like that. But I'm going to paint them first because I don't actually want to do too much on this. I'm probably going to put some mesh over the windows, and I may end up doing some weathering on it, but I'm not going to repaint very much of it because I wanted to retain the polizei markings. And the only other thing to talk about that I've got on with is on Herbie. Herbie is going to have multiple machine guns. So these are 2 other sprues that have come from that mini art kit, and we've got 4 identical guns here. So I'm going to basically mount either coming out the windows or on the roof, I'm not sure, but again I'm going to paint them first because once more Herbie I want to be recognisable. What I might do is add like a turbocharger type thing coming out of the bonnet, and I have a few bits and pieces I can use for that, and I might end up again putting mesh over the windows, but I want those 2 cars to remain relatively recognisable. So that's where I'm at. This has dried nicely, so what I'll be doing now is getting the filler. I'll do that at the same time as I do the other filler work, so I'll get some milliput or something, fill in these holes, and then I'll take these down to paint at the same time. So yeah, progress is good. I've just had a lot of fun with super glue, hot glue, and some ends of cocktail sticks, and never let it be said that saving things is a bad thing, because I have loads of these little cocktail stick ends and I'm making use of them now, though I've had them for ages. So what I'm going to do now is this Barbie truck, which has a ram, and it gets that ram for free because of which sponsor it has, is also going to have a wrecking ball. And I'm going to do that with this length of chain, which is the remainder of the chain which Angela very kindly gave me for a build for Battle Games Middle Earth. And my plan is that I'm going to put hot glue around the clasp end, and then stick some of these ends of the cocktail sticks to make it a spiked ball, and then I will glue it to the top of the Barbie truck and have it hanging down the back. Kind of like that. So this could get a bit messy, so I'm probably not going to run the camera. I'm just going to put a glob of hot glue all over the end of that clasp, and then stick as many of these ends of the cocktail sticks. As you can see, I've got a whole pot full of odds and ends into it as I can before it cools, and I can always come back in with the hot glue gun and reactivate the hot glue as well. So I'll get this done and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Decided I may as well lean into this Disney thing with one more element. This came out of a Kinder Egg, and I'm going to have a very kind of spooky looking Disney princess on top of some kind of a metal kind of girder, and that's going to be another element. So what I'm going to do is I've clamped down a bit of cardboard to my board, as I always do, and I'm going to hot glue this to the bottom, to this cardboard. So just run some hot glue there. I may need to do more. I may need to do more than just hot glue. I'll probably come along with some modelling compound or something like that and fill in around it. But for now, you can see that that is going to be strong enough. And then what we can do is we can then mount our princess on the top once that is a bit more solid. So yeah, that's something else I'm going to do. I will probably end up draping lots of kind of like greenery and making this, weathering this up quite a lot to make it fit in with the Gaslands feel. But yeah, scary as hell that, isn't it? Can you imagine being a kid and getting that? I'd be terrified. I have painted up these little guns, and now what I'm going to do is stick them on the side of the Polizei vehicle, and I will then have a look at making a few more adjustments, but not too many. I don't want this to be too filthy. I will be doing some mesh over the windows, and I might do a little bit of kind of like spikes and things with it, but apart from that I'm not going to screw with it too much. So I've just got some super glue, and I'm just going to dab that on and glue it in place. And what's going to happen is it's going to be one gun per side. So let's put some super glue on this. So there'll be one on one side and one on the other, and the question of how the driver gets in is not one that I'm willing to discuss. So there we are. There's one gun. Bit fiddly to get on actually. Bit fiddly to get it on nicely. There we are. That'll do. So a little bit more super glue may be needed, but I'm going to let that go off. So I'll do that not on camera because it's going to be a bit fiddly and a bit time consuming. And then I'll bring you back for Herbie. You can see in the background, because Herbie's machine guns have been painted up as well. So I'll show you how I'm going to fit them. Herbie. So what I've done is I have painted up these two guns. I've actually cut the handles off just now because they didn't work. And these are going to get glued on the top, as you saw very briefly just before I moved it and they fell off. So we're going to put a couple of dabs of super glue on the roof there. And I'm not totally sure where the other two guns are going to go, whether they're going to be mounted in between these or whether I'm going to put them on the windows like I did for the police car. But there we have the gun on top of Herbie, and I'll mount the other one on the other side. And that looks pretty badass, I think. Pretty pleased with that. So we'll get another couple of little dabs of super glue, one here, one at the back. As I've said, I'm not going to do too much here, mainly because I'm such a fan of Herbie. I do feel a bit odd screwing with such a lovely model, and it wasn't actually cheap to buy this. But that doesn't matter, because it's going to be awesome. And I'll be able to play with him now. So there we are. Herbie two guns, and I've got two more to go. So let's have a little play around. You can see them here. Let's have a little play around with that and see where I'm going to fit them. So what I'm actually going to do with these is I'm going to put them from the window across the top of the front, kind of like bumper, a wheel arch, that's the word. So it's going to be very hard for me to show, but I'm going to have they're going to be so that they can lean out the car. It's very hard for me to show because of the where the camera is and the angle, but it's basically going to sit somewhere like that. So I'll get that glued on, and I'll bring you back and show what it looks like when it's done. I have two things to work on this project right now. First of all, here is the Disney princess on her leaning kind of like tower thing, and what I'm going to do is I have my Luke's modelling compound here, and I'm just going to build up around the base just to give it a little bit more support and also give it some terrain. So I'll do that off camera. I've seen that before, but that's going to be happening next. The other thing that I'm going to do is I have an old, very kindly donated by Angela, this is an old sieve, and I'm going to snip out bits of this wire mesh and glue it over the windows, certainly on the police car. I'm not sure about on, I've got another idea for Herbie, but certainly on the police car I'm going to put some wire mesh over the front, side and back just to make it a little bit more secure. So I will use wire cutters. So actually I'll just grab wire cutters and we'll do the first bit, I'll show it you, and I'll do most of that off camera as well because it'll be quite repetitive. Okay, so I've got my wire cutters. So what we're going to do is we're going to snip away a little bit of this. Which is going to be a lot harder than I expected it to be from the looks of it. I may need to have better wire cutters than these. I may need to actually go and get some snips. Right, I'm going to go get some snips and find out if that's going to be more successful. Turns out this stuff is super tough. So I've got my snips, they're no good, they just make it bend. So I've got some other wire cutters, they're no good, they just make it bend. And then I suddenly thought about my strong scissors that I've got, and these cut it fine. Yeah, I was about to abandon the idea then. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a section of this like that. And now we have our section of, and that'll actually work really nicely for wire link fence as well, for smaller scales. That's cool to know. And what we're going to do is I'll just get some super glue, I'll tidy up the edges, and then I will super glue it down onto the front of the car like that. And there we have it. So I'm going to do that for the front, the side, the back. I'm not going to do it on Herbie just yet, but I'm going to do it on the police car. And I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it, whatever that next step may end up being. Maybe some spikes on the front of this car. The last thing to do for this is to attach this spiked chain. Well, my first attempt is going to involve super glue, and I've no idea if this is going to hold it or not, because this plastic is a little bit funny, but we can but try. I don't know where my baking soda is, otherwise I'd throw some baking soda on that right now. I can't find it anywhere. I had a good look for it, so we're going to hope that goes off, and it dries fine, and it does dry, and it doesn't fall off when I pick it up, and that will be that done. And that's a pretty badass looking vehicle, I think you'll agree. So the Disney Princess is ready to be removed from the cardboard, which has been clipped, and there's absolutely no warping, as you can see, so that's worked very well. So I'm going to cut that out now, and then I'm actually decided I'm going to put some Arid Grasslands base ready on. So I'm going to put some fast dry basing glue, and then stick some of this, not in everywhere, just in a few places, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'll do the cutting out, and then I will show you how I'm going to go out doing the base material. This is going to be super simple. I've got the fast dry basing glue, which is what I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spread it around, put some dollops on, and I'll use an old brush. One thing to be aware of if you use this Luke's APS is fast dry and basing glue is it does screw up your brushes very fast. So don't use a brush that you care about at all. Use one like this one, which is already completely destroyed, and so it doesn't matter in the slightest. So I'll just spread that around a bit to get the patches, and like I've said, I don't want it on everywhere. I'm just thinking about adding a little bit of interest to the base, like so. And then I'm going to come along and I'm just going to scatter it on. And I've got the newspaper down, so I'll be able to tip this straight back into my pot, so I won't waste anything, because I am very tight and I don't like waste. So yeah, there we are. That should add a nice little bit of interest, and depending on how well it comes out, I may go back and do something a little similar to the other bases, or maybe not to all of them, but to one or two of them at least, just to see whether it if it does come out nicely, then I might do that. But I think that'll add a little bit of nicety to the bottom of this one. So there we are, done. A little bit of extra sugar for this final piece for this build. Or is it a final piece? Well, who knows. So the final part for this bit of the scatter terrain is to put the sign across this starting gate. And I've gone and printed out the Welcome to Virginia City sign from Herbie. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting this out of this bit of paper and sticking it there, and then cutting the holes in it as well, and making it look good. The first thing I'm going to do before I do any cutting is I'm going to just paste PVA over the top of that, maybe a couple of different coats, just to make it a little bit more hard wearing, and I'll do that on both sides. So I'll get that done. I will clamp this down or clip this down to a board so that it doesn't warp, and then do that now. And then when that's got its coating on and I think it's going to be strong enough, I'll come along, I'll show you, I'll cut it out with the hobby knife, and then we'll glue it on place on the bones, and then it will be done. The sign has been printed out and is here. It looks okay, I'm happy enough with it. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hot glue this onto these uprights, because I don't think that any other type of glue is actually going to really make a good enough bond. So I'll put a couple of blobs of hot glue on. I really don't like hot glue. And then I'll come along and I'll press it on. It's a bit fiddly to film, apologies for the arm across, but there we are, now you can see. Welcome to Virginia City. So that's the starting gate. That could be the end of the build. However, I do have my 3D printer running. I am trying to get another element, so you'll know when I do, when you watch this video, whether I have managed to get another element or not. But at least for now, the original plan is complete.
So there we are, that was a really fun build. Something, again, out of the ordinary, not I've done before, the Gaslands style, and trashing cars. It really does discombobulate me to not try and make something look as nice as possible, but it is a style, and I'll hopefully even get a game with these. I've got enough there to play a game. I've got 2 cars on each team and enough terrain made up with books and rocks and what have you that I can put together a table. So if I do that, I'll obviously put that on the channel and let you know how it goes. I have actually also 3D printed out the house, my failed attempt to do one by scratch. Got a 3D printer now, so I have printed out a house that goes in with this style, which will be a separate video. I'm just, as I film this now, this outro, just getting to the end of completing that. So it might even be linked wherever it is that YouTube puts those links. If it's out, I'll try to remember to pop a link on here so you can enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed looking at the pictures. I have put them before this section. I'm going to try to do that more and more often. I think it makes it a little easier. And do pop a comment below if you've enjoyed this build and if it's inspired you, or if you've done anything similar. I would love to hear from you. I do really enjoy replying to all the comments that I receive. So thank you ever so much for watching if you've made it this far, and please do stay healthy, stay safe and stay well.